What if a future war has already been planned out, down to the last detail? Not in some classified briefing room at the Pentagon, but in a public document that lays out the entire strategy, the weapons, and the catastrophic global fallout. Today, we are going way beyond the headlines. We're dissecting a document that claims to reveal the secret playbook for a conflict that could literally reshape our world. So let's break down this chilling forecast, piece by piece. Okay, the first thing you have to wrap your head around is that this isn't about a war that's happening right now. Take a close look at the date on this document. April 2026. This whole thing is a forecast, right? It's a meticulously built scenario of a war that hasn't happened. Yet, it's a really deep strategic dive into how a conflict between Iran and a US-Israel coalition might actually play out. It reads less like a news report and more like a history book that was written in the future. And we're about to crack it open. All right, so to kick things off, we really need to get the fundamental idea behind this prediction. We're going to unpack the core argument because its central point is, well, it's startling, and it's absolutely crucial for understanding everything else that follows. This gets to the heart of it immediately. If you're picturing tanks rolling across a desert, you need to change that picture. The war that's described in these pages isn't really about capturing territory. It's about breaking systems. Think about the global economy not as a marketplace, but like this incredibly complex machine with millions of interlocking gears. You got supply chains, energy markets, financial networks. The strategy here isn't to crush the other guy's army, but to jam a wrench into those gears and make the whole machine grind to a catastrophic halt. The goal isn't conquest, it's total systemic collapse. And that brings us to the playbook itself. How would you even fight a war designed to break the system? This next part digs into the unconventional strategies that, according to this analysis, would define the whole conflict and just completely turn traditional military thinking on its head. This quote, which we've translated from the source, is basically the key that unlocks the whole strategy. Think about it for a second. The combined military power of the United States and Israel. It's just overwhelming. Technologically superior in almost every way you can measure. But this document argues that that very superiority, it could actually be a weakness. Why? Well, because the opponent isn't planning on playing by their rules. This is a prediction of a war where the rules of the game are rewritten from the very beginning. And there's a name for this strategy. It's called asymmetric warfare. To put it simply, it means you don't fight fair. You just don't get into a head-on fight you know you're going to lose. Instead, you act like a virus attacking a body. You don't try to overpower it, you find its weak points, its dependencies. And for a modern superpower, those weak points are its reliance on global supply lines, its fragile economy, and its political divisions. So you strike there, using unconventional tools to cause the most chaos for the least cost. It's the art of turning your enemy's greatest strength into their biggest weakness. So how does this theory actually become a concrete plan? Let's dive into the most detailed part of this analysis, the strategic doctrine it lays out for Iran. The document describes this fascinating, decentralized, three-tier structure for fighting this asymmetric war, one that's designed for resilience and surprise. Now, this structure, according to the document, isn't some big top-down pyramid that you can just take out the leader and it all falls apart. No, it's more like a hydra. You cut off one head and the others just keep on going. At the very top, you've got a high-level command controlling the big strategic assets, the real crown jewels, long-range ballistic missiles that act as a massive deterrent. Below them, you've got mid-level forces that operate pretty independently, managing things like swarms of fast attack boats and huge fleets of drones. And then at the base, you have small, agile, low-level cells built for guerrilla warfare, sabotage, and messing with enemy logistics from the inside. So here you can really see the fundamental clash in philosophies. On one side, you've got the heavy hitters of conventional war, huge aircraft carrier groups, basically floating cities of power, fifth-gen fighter jets that cost hundreds of millions of dollars each. It's a force built for shock and awe. And on the other side, the tools of asymmetry, cheap but numerous swarm boats designed to overwhelm a sophisticated warship with sheer numbers, cyber attacks that can cripple infrastructure without firing a single shot, and a network of proxy forces that give you influence and deniability. It's not about matching their firepower. It's about making all that expensive firepower strategically irrelevant. Okay, let's talk about the actual hardware, because this strategy is backed by a seriously potent and modern arsenal. The document points to Sejal long-range missiles as a key deterrent. But here's the really crucial detail. It claims their precision is boosted by guidance from Chinese low and medium Earth orbit satellites. Now that is a game changer, because it starts to chip away at the technological monopoly on precision strikes that the West has held for so long. The analysis also points to Russian support, providing advanced tactical weapons, maybe even hypersonic missiles. These are weapons that fly so fast they can challenge even the best missile defense systems out there. This is not some low-tech insurgency. It's a high-tech, asymmetric strategy using global partnerships to challenge a superpower. And this brings a whole psychological game into play. With a decentralized command, the planning doesn't happen in some big, obvious military headquarters that satellites are watching 24/7. It happens in the shadows. And that creates this profound uncertainty for your enemy. Who's calling the shots for the next attack? Where is it going to come from? How do you even strike back against your enemy you can't pin down? This lack of a clear center of gravity is a weapon in and of itself, designed to confuse, to frustrate, and ultimately to paralyze a more traditional opponent. So, as we've established, the physical battlefield is just one piece of this puzzle. Now, we need to widen our focus to what the document describes as the inevitable, cascading, and absolutely devastating global fallout. This is where the war comes home for literally everyone, no matter where you live on this planet. The economic bullseye of this conflict is this little strip of water, the Strait of Hormuz. It is one of the most critical choke points on the entire planet. About a fifth of the world's total oil supply passes through that narrow channel every single day. According to this analysis, making that strait impassable is a top priority. By mining it or using anti-ship missiles and swarm boats to hit tankers, Iran could basically turn off the tap for a huge portion of the global economy. This isn't just a regional naval battle. It's a declaration of global economic war. And the immediate result of that is a catastrophic oil price shock. The document projects a jump from a world of relatively stable prices, let's say $85 a barrel, to a world where oil could shoot up to over $300, maybe even way higher. Let's just pause for a second and think about what that really means. This isn't just paying more for gas. Oil is in the fertilizer that grows our food. It's the fuel for the ships that carry all our stuff. It's the raw material for plastics in everything we own. A price shock this big would trigger hyperinflation, force entire industries to shut down, and grind global supply chains to a halt. I mean, that's the recipe for a worldwide depression right there. Let's just quickly break down the predicted ripple effect, because it would touch every major player on the globe. For the United States, the forecast is a severe recession and crippling inflation. For Europe, which is super dependent on energy imports, it predicts a massive energy crisis, leading to industrial shutdowns and social unrest. For China, the factory of the world, it's an existential threat, cutting off the supply chains that are the lifeblood of its economy. The analysis also suggests India would face immense economic pressure. But the darkest prediction is for fragile states like Pakistan. We're talking severe food and fuel shortages that could push the whole nation towards total collapse. So after laying out the strategy and the devastating global consequences, the analysis starts to move toward its very sobering conclusion. It starts to question what victory even means in a war like this. And it builds to a pretty grim final verdict. And this is the central, haunting question that the document poses. If one side achieves its military goals, but its economy is in ruins and its society is fractured by the cost, is that really a win? If the other side survives and proves its strategy works, but its people have suffered immensely, is that victory? The analysis suggests that in a war fought this way, the whole concept of a clear winner becomes meaningless. There are just different degrees of losing, shared by everyone. And here's a number that puts the cost into stark perspective. According to the document's own citations, the United States and its allies would need to spend a staggering $300 billion just on preparations for this kind of war. That's before a single shot is even fired. It's an unbelievable sum that just highlights how prohibitively expensive modern conflict is, especially when you're facing an enemy that refuses to play by the old rules. That cost alone is a powerful deterrent. So, how does a war like this end? Not with a victory parade, not with a treaty signed on the deck of a battleship. The document lays out an endgame that's born of pure exhaustion. The conditions for a ceasefire aren't about surrender. They're about a grim acceptance of reality. A military stalemate where neither side can get the upper hand. The complete exhaustion of economic resources on both sides. Intense international pressure to just find a way to stop the global bleeding. And finally, a mutual agreement to just stop fighting, because the cost of continuing is simply too high for everyone. Okay, for our final section, let's connect this forecast, this look into a possible 2026, back to the world we're living in right now. Because the real value of an analysis like this isn't just predicting the future, it's what it tells us about the present. At the end of the day, this whole speculative analysis is a powerful warning. It suggests that the entire paradigm of warfare is shifting. The tactics described here, cyber attacks, drone swarms, economic disruption, proxy warfare, these aren't science fiction. We see echoes of them in conflicts around the world today. This document argues that these aren't just isolated tactics, they're the building blocks of a new, coherent doctrine of warfare that's perfectly adopted for our complex, interconnected, and fragile world. It's a vision where the goal is less about planting a flag on a hill and more about breaking the trust and stability that hold our modern societies together. And we end with this final, provocative question translated directly from the last page of the source document. It's not a question about strategy or tech, but about morality and perspective. It reframes the entire analysis, forcing you to consider the human element behind the big geopolitical chess game. It's a deeply unsettling thought to leave you with, and it really captures the ultimate warning of this entire forecast, that in the wars of the future, the line between winning and losing might just disappear entirely, leaving only the cost.